Okay, so hello everyone, and we would like to welcome you on behalf of the Lewis Stokes Midwest Regional Center of Excellence to this session called Equity and Justice in STEM. My name is Alexius Lampkin, and I will serve as the session moderator today. I'm pleased to be here as I'm connected with LSAMP programs in multiple ways. Currently, I'm a Bridge to Doctorate Fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I study molecular and cellular pharmacology. Specifically, I'm very interested in understanding how stress can induce mental health disorders. Prior to coming to graduate school, I went to undergrad at Albany State University, where I was a member of the Florida-Georgia LSAMP program. And so throughout my entire academic career, LSAMP has played a huge role and provided many opportunities for me to grow. And so I just have a few housekeeping items before we introduce today's speaker. And so this session will be recorded and made available for viewing in the Whova app by next Wednesday. We ask that you provide your feedback for today's session, and I'll be posting the survey link in the chat within Whova. If you have any questions for the presenters, please type them in the Q&A discussion board within Whova, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. But this will be a very interactive session, so we do want you to participate throughout by typing in the chat, answering the questions, and playing other games that will be presented. And this session is about 1 hour and 45 minutes, and it's imperative that we stay within time. If we run out of time for the Q&A, we encourage you to continue talking in the discussion boards or reaching out to the presenters within the Whova app. So now it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to today's speakers. We have Dr. Janique Williams and Naoku Little-Jackson. So Dr. Williams is a diversity curriculum specialist and part-time faculty in the College of Education at Kennesaw State University, which is the second largest university in Georgia. She's connected to LSAMP through her previous role as the coordinator of LSAMP programming at Columbus State University. Naoku is a third-year graduate student in biochemistry and molecular biology at Howard University, and she was an LSAMP alumni at her undergrad at Johnson C. State University. And fun fact, Dr. Williams and Naoku both attended Johnson C. State University for undergrad. So now, without further ado, let's welcome our speakers.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so excited to be here with each of you. And we are excited to get started. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint because we have quite a bit of information to cover. So we encourage you all to be engaged, to partner with us in this session. This is a courageous conversation. These are opportunities for us to get to know one another and to provide resources and support as we navigate. We did a similar session last year and it turned out really well. And we wanted to expand it a little bit more this year. So I will pull up my screen here and we'll go ahead and get started. Is everyone able to see it? If you can give me a thumbs up, let me know. Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, so of course, we're talking about equity in STEM and how that plays out. Just to give you a little bit more information about myself, again, I'm Dr. Janika Williams. I am an advocator, right? So it's so interesting to hear people describe you as you go through, but I always want to talk about just my contribution and what I bring to this space and what I want to support you all with as we navigate. So I am a diversity equity trainer by trade in my job, but then also I've had a great opportunity to be a consultant as well. So I am all things diversity, equity, and learning and training. So I don't come just with a small bit of knowledge, but with over 10 years of experience in the field in higher ed and over 8 years in private sector. So just be mindful that I'm a resource for you. I'm still learning and growing. I've not arrived, but I'm excited to share what I have. If diversity, equity, and curriculum development is something that you're interested in, we will share our information at the end, but then also, outcomes and trainings and program coordinator, a variety of things, a researcher. You'll see here on the right-hand side, we're in the process of putting out a book for our experiences as women doctors in the field of education, science, you name it. That will be coming out at the first part of 2020. So if you guys are interested in that space, there'll be a link to us a little bit later.
Hi everyone, I'm Naoku Little-Jackson. I am currently a third-year PhD student in biochemistry and molecular biology at Howard College of Medicine. I received my bachelor's degree in biology from Johnson C. Smith University. Johnson C. Smith University was also where I joined LSMRCE, so I'm very familiar with the LSMRCE program and it's very dear to my heart. Currently, I'm a Ronald E. McNair Fellow. I'm currently, my dissertation research interests lie in the field of bioinformatics, genomics, and clinical informatics. And these are just some pictures of the moments and experiences that I had that I was a really proud student. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. So you know a little bit more about us and what we contribute. So if there's any space where if you're a faculty, you're a staff, you're a student, or you know anyone that would like to connect with us after, please, please, please don't hesitate. We are here as a resource. We're going to talk about the power of networking and our connection a little bit later, but we want to kind of dive into the actual presentation. So just to give you an overview, the purpose of this training is really to give a brief overview. Some of us are very familiar with the terms, but just kind of give an overview of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want to provide tools on how to navigate within social justice within STEM. This is not a new topic, but it is one that is very important to talk about in this space. We know that our students, our faculty and staff are being provided with a lot of different information, but in the area of STEM and how this integrates, we want to talk about that today. We want to also talk about the power of our voices, right? Each of us have a voice here, whether we're a coordinator or an advocate for students in STEM in terms of faculty or staff, or we're a student and we're in the classroom every day, where some of the students we're the only in the classroom if we're a minority, or we're the only in the classroom or in scholarships and opportunities and the things across the sector in STEM. So we want to talk about our voice and how our voice can be used in a variety of different ways. We want to talk about changing the narrative. Oftentimes there's conversations that are had around social justice in STEM and how that advocates and doesn't advocate for some students in some aspects. And we want to talk about that. Identity awareness, knowing who you are and your brand and how you're marketing yourself as a student, using those differences as a true tool to advocate for justice for those that are coming behind you, for your current self in situations that you may be in. And then we want to reflect on personal experiences. It's really cool. Naku was able to network with some other students and talk about their experience within the STEM world. And we hope to shine a light for some of our faculty and staff on how to advocate for students in their space, where we don't want to just advocate and empower the students to use their voice. We also want to empower those that are working with students to have that same opportunity. So we will talk about that. We'll reflect on personal experiences and identity awareness and how it impacts everyday lives. And then we'll leave you with some resources and tools. And we don't think that we have all the resources, right? So when we get to the Q&A session, or the resource section, excuse me, and if you all have some additional resources, if this is a field of passion for you or an area, a topic of passion of yours, and you know some additional resources, this is a time to share that. We want to be a group that gives and advocates for those in need. So just to give a little bit of a background on this here, we want to look at diversity. So diversity is all the ways in which people may differ, right? So when we look at diversity, it's the difference of people, cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, you name it, it's just the difference, right? But then when we look at equity, we talk about fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people. We want to talk about how it's not just for one or two groups or a dominant or a subordinate group. We want to talk about it for all people, right? And then one's identity cannot be predicted by the particular outcome. So just when you're thinking about equity, look at it through that lens of access and opportunity and advancement for all, right? And then when you look at inclusion, it's a variety of people, they have their power in terms of their voice, their decision-making and authority, right? So we know within a systemic oppression, there may be those that don't have the voice, right? They don't get to make the decisions. They don't get to have the authority. We're going to talk about how we can look at that through the eyes of STEM, through the lens of STEM, and then navigate for progression as we move forward. One thing that I talked about a little bit earlier was in terms of identity. And if you are writing anything down, write this down. It's called intersecting identity, right? So it's called intersectionality. You can look at under it's intersectionality theory. It is very important. I didn't want to go too in depth about that today, but if you do get a chance for continued learning after this session, I highly encourage for you to look into intersectionality or identity theory in that way. Because when we look at STEM and the equity and diversity of career choice, collegiate choice, scholarship opportunities, we know that there's a variety of differences, but that is all impacted in our ways of our students going after it or faculty staff going after it. It all is impacted by our identity, from gender to ethnicity to social and economic background to ability or disability. It really affects our choice, right? It affects how we integrate with one another. And it can be limiting at times. If we do not have the most positive lens, we're going to say we can't do it, we're not able to do it. Before I started this session, I empowered our team that's going to present today and said, we can do this. We're going to speak life. We're excited about this opportunity. But if our experiences have been negative with our gender, we're put to the back, or ethnicity, we're discriminated against, or social economic status, we're looked at as less than or greater than in different areas, or our disability, a lack of capability, it may impact or affect our decisions. It may impact or affect the way we move throughout life. So an example of that is academic self-concept, right? So in STEM, we know that STEM it gives us opportunity for great challenge and learning. But if you're not confident, or if you've had bad experiences in different intersecting identities, you might say to yourself, I'm not good at science. Right? You may hear, and we hear this all the time. I used to work for one of our chairs at my former institution. She used to say, encourage students in K through 12 to say, I love math. Right? Because we continue to hear, I'm not good at math. I don't like math. Well, when you speak those things, you begin to take on that ownership of, I'm not good enough. I can't do science. I'm not able to do it, from different ethnic or gender or social economic backgrounds. You may not have had the access, and you come into different programs or initiatives and you say, I didn't get a chance to read that book, or I didn't get a chance to hear that person speak. And someone may have, you may feel less than, you may feel like you can't do it, right? And then as we matriculate, because we want our students to go on, we want our faculty to grow in the field. And when it comes to identity in terms of career, right, especially in the field of STEM, I don't see anyone who does the job, right? I don't see anybody that does the position that I'm interested in, that looks like me, talks like me, comes from the community that I come from. Now we're seeing trickles of it expand over time, but in some fields, we don't see it at all. And some fields we're seeing slow progression. So it's really, really important that when we look at our identity, when we empower our students, that we take into consideration their background. Sometimes we just tell students, you got it, you made it here to this university, you can go forward. But if we are true, excellent practitioners, we are taking the time to get to know the students where they're from, if they came from urban areas or rural areas, that may impact their view on how to navigate. So as practitioners, as coordinators, are we taking the time to get to know our students? Yes, we want them to get good grades. Yes, we want them to turn the papers in on time, right? I'm a former coordinator, I know. Yes, we want you to fill out the survey. Yes, yes, yes. But we also want to get to know our students, and in turn, the students will greatly appreciate that. And when you have the visibility in those areas, it minimizes the stereotype. So if I'm there and I'm representing an area that is not often there, it breaks the stereotype that I may have if I don't have the interaction. And if I don't have the interaction, then I have perceptions, right? So I have a perception and I have a stereotype if I don't have the interaction. But the more I have interaction, the more I have opportunities to connect with people of difference. The more I communicate, the more I explore differences, the better I can become in understanding who's with me as I navigate through the STEM space. So we're going to talk about building a ladder. It's so important to look at how that impacts, right? So equality, everybody has the same access. You pull up your boots by the same, you put your pants on at the same time, all those things. We all have the same opportunities. We all can do this. We're Americans, right? How many of you have heard that? We all have, right? Everybody has the same opportunities, but do we? Do we really all have the same opportunities? If you see this image here, right, you see the great diploma there. We all get the chance to go to college, right? So equality, it looks at in terms of images of the world, we look as equal, right? It is all of us get this opportunity. But in the world, it isn't truly, equality is not like that, right? It isn't equal. So when you see there's certain students that get the scholarships, right? When certain students are taking out loans. I have talked to so many students that have taken out loans for school because they're just trying to accomplish their dreams. While there isn't anything wrong with that, sometimes those scholarships give you a leg up and that stress removed because you don't have to worry about the hardship or financial background of it, right? Educated parents, where you can go to your parents and say, hey, I tried to get with my academic advisor and this happened. Oh, they say, oh, do this, 1, 2, and 3. Or, oh, I know somebody that works at that university. Or, oh, when I was a college student, there's that reference there. Everybody does not have that opportunity to have that reference. So what are we doing to navigate in that space to be mindful of how we communicate? SAT and ACT tutors, right? Those can help you get into those great academic institutions. We know that, and that's starting to fade with COVID. The scoring and the testing is in certain areas is not as required because they're wanting to make sure students are getting in. But for those institutions that are, if you have access to tutoring so that your grades can improve, so that your scores can improve, then you're able to navigate. Upper middle class, right? If you have the financial means to go to the STEM camp, to meet with the mentors, to drive across town, to go to different things, to advance your skill set, right? Honors college, AP credit, all of that, activities and networks, right? Sometimes those networks don't necessarily look like, if students don't have those networks, they don't know where to start. They ask the wrong questions. And sometimes that wrong question can get you put out of a room, right? Or can get you pushed to the side because we know you don't really know what's going on. And then so all of those people may have that access, but then you have those that don't, where they're coming from poorly funded schools, or they have less skilled teachers in the area, in the inner city area. And we don't want to marginalize and say that only inner city have less skilled teachers, because we know that that's not true, but there is a chance that that can happen. So, impacted curriculum as you navigate the space where students are starting in the negative and still trying to make it. Yes, they all have the opportunity to go to school. Yes, they all have the opportunity to get the scholarship. Yes, they all have the opportunity to progress in the field of STEM, but are their footing in their educational and their prior experiences giving them the chance to do that? And as STEM coordinators, faculty, students, we want to know that going in. We want to be mindful that we're not all starting at the same space. So when we communicate with one another, we apply grace. When we communicate with our students and we're trying to make sure we're advocating for them, we don't just assume that they know what we're talking about. I remember working with several students in LSM here in Georgia, and if we took them, when we could go to our wonderful conferences, we took them to the conference within, I think it was Indianapolis, and it was some of our students' first time flying. I'll say it again. It was some of our students' first time flying. I assumed, I will put myself on the chopping block today because some of us may not feel comfortable doing that. But I assumed, because I had traveled, I came from a good background where my parents had taken me across the world, across the city. So surely I know you know how to pack. Surely I know you know how to do this. And I assumed that my students knew that. I was sadly mistaken when I ran into some of our students not being as prepared as they needed to be. I owned that, right? So as coordinators, are there assumptions, or as faculty or staff, are there assumptions that we're having about our students, whether it's academically? Oh, everybody should know how to write a personal statement. Or you got it, just send it in. I had 2 students send me their personal statement. We were revving up for our scholarship run. And I'll say, okay, let me see it. I'm gonna glance over it and keep moving. I got the personal statement. I said, one moment, we're gonna pause because we have got some work to do. And not that those students weren't equipped, they weren't smart, they weren't any, I needed to take the additional time because they had not experienced that. I needed to take the additional time to make sure I was interacting with them for their better development. So I encourage you today, as we go through the process of navigating what is equality and what is equity, that we understand that sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we have to take that extra step and navigate and communicate with our students so that they can be on the best foot to move forward, because everything is not always fair for everyone. And I want to make sure I'm giving to the students as they need it. So let's talk about the ladder, right? So we have an opportunity to build our ladder. And today we're actually going to do that. It's going to be one of our activities because I want to hear your voices. I want to hear what you want to add. This is going to be interactive. So as I talk about this section, please be mindful that you are going to build your ladder, right? You're going to talk about your access and your support system, right? So when you look at a ladder, in contrast to equity, we redirect resources to the past with greatest need to fix, right? We look at the barriers and we find ways to intentionally provide support. So think of students, if you're in this room, you are here, hello, we're excited to have you. Faculty, hello, we're excited to have you. Coordinators, hello, we're excited to have you. What do you need? Right? When I look at this ladder and we're looking at, regular assessments to look at what is needed, what works and what doesn't work. Are you doing that in your areas to assess, is this working for, the opportunities? I remember talking to a couple of other LSM students, and I'm not going to say any names because I don't know who knows who, you never know. But I talk about, I was so engaged with my students and we were doing assessment, we were doing programming, we were doing these things. And we had one of those students just come into our campus and they said, oh, our program doesn't do this. Or we don't do, we have never met. We only met one time before the conference. So if that is your area, how can we strengthen our programs? What are areas that we can set? What are goals that we can set to strengthen our students as they navigate? Are you looking over personal statements? Are you taking time to have a mini retreat to get to know your scholars? Students, are you communicating what you need? We're going to talk about advocating for yourself, because some people are going to advocate for you, but you're your number one person that can advocate. No one can talk for you better than you, right? No one can tell your needs better than you can tell your needs, right? So as a student, what do you need? Do you need teachers that are faculty that are culturally sensitive, that are going through trainings to understand differences? Do you need additional office hours to increase your grade, or just to get it? Like I just need one more hour with this professor or the TA or whoever is involved to help me get this biology. I'm having a hard time in chemistry. I need an extra hour. Do you need that extra prep for GRE or your assessment test to go into graduate school? What do you need, right? Think about those things. And then also you inquire to understand, how participants really look at equity. So is it fair that are you doing everything fair across the board, or are you doing things for students as they need it? As you go through the access, the ladder, what access do you have? Is it limited, no access, some access, or sustained access? So you're going to build your ladder. You're going to talk about how and what works best for you, right? So I'm going to talk about that in this space. When you build your ladder, I want you to think of 3 things. You're going to type them in the chat, okay? I want you to think of 3 things. The first set of 3 things is, what do you need? As a student, as a faculty, as a staff, as a person that's in support of LSM, what do you actually need in this space? Think of those 3 things and start sharing them in the chat, okay? As a student, as a faculty, as a person that's partnering with LSAMP in these areas, what exactly do you need? And I'll call on my two wonderful partners in crime today, whoever wants to go first. They're going to give some examples so you kind of are familiar with the background. Yes.
Well, currently, I feel like I'm in need of a lot of tutoring within, certain different doctoral courses I have to take. And it's just also beneficial when you're writing your dissertation. So that is something that I need. And one thing I will give when those needs are being met is just mentoring.
Just your needs. Well, just your needs right now. Just your three needs.
Okay, so
yeah, just your three needs.
More access to tutoring, possibilities for interview practice, because I will be applying to jobs after I graduate. More resources such as, different fellowships to apply to, that would be really helpful.
Excellent.
Yes, and also as a graduate student, mine are very similar to Naku's, but
help.
I just a little bit more about me. I actually switched fields. So in undergrad, I was a forensic science major, and now I study neuroscience and pharmacology. So when I came, I had no background. So I needed a lot of help and extra tutoring and people to sit down and be patient with me while I learned and transitioned in that field. And then also now I'm very interested in transitioning from preclinical work to clinical work. So I'm looking for mentors and people who will help me learn and navigate and talk the industry lingo and things of that nature. And I feel like as we grow, we always need someone to look up to, someone to help us grow and become the next best version of ourselves. So I feel like those are always good needs to have.
Excellent. So you hear both of those examples of what they need to be better professionals in this space, to be better students. Those are the things that you have to voice out loud. When we don't voice them out loud to faculty, students, to anybody else, then you don't have the opportunity to do so. So make sure that you do. And I know we have some great responses in the chat.
Yes. So from Denise Thomas, we have more knowledge of resources to give her students.
Excellent.
Susan said support and time. I'm sorry if I missed
Support and time. Let me pause on those. More resources, and we're going to provide you with some great resources in this actual session. So stay tuned. Don't leave us. We are here to provide those resources for you. But time, that is excellent. I was wondering, was anybody going to put that in? Because how many of us feel like we're just running? The semester started, we're just going, and we need more time. That's excellent.
Yes, Sarah said, I need to remember to keep a good balance during our virtual existence.
That is so key. I'll say that too. And please partner with me. Thank you so much. When we look at in a virtual space, right? It's brand new. I was talking to them as we set up, I'm so excited for the blur, right? We have so much going behind in our backgrounds. We have everything going on. So just be mindful that if you're needing additional support in this virtual space, everybody knows that we need additional support. So don't be afraid as a student, as a faculty, as a staff to say, I need additional support. I really think that COVID allowed for us to take a moment to relax, or some of us to relax, and then to really expand and understand what we need, right? And now it's just taking on the skill set to learn that and keep going. Continue to share. Thank you.
Yes. Donald said time, extra staff, and scholarship dollars. Mai Yang, sorry if I mispronounced your name. She said, as a student, you need support and guidance. Support is a reoccurring theme in a lot of the message we're seeing here. Stability, tutoring, and sleep. I need to sleep.
How many needs to sleep? Put some with it. I go to a place that says put fire in the chat. If you need to sleep, give us an amazing emoji. If more sleep is what you need, put an emoji in the chat or emoji up and let us know. I can't give you that. We can't, but we can talk about wonderful things that you can do to navigate that. And when advocating for yourself, you don't have to do the extra work of you. It's going to be work, right? We know that as students, as faculty, as staff, it's going to be work. But to those, the coordinator or someone that mentioned they needed additional staff, sometimes working with our students are our best defense, right? Today, my co-host, she was just like, "Are you sure we can do this together?" I said, "Yes." When they contacted me for this presentation, I said, I need a partner in this. And who better than a third-year doc student to talk about that, right? So advocating and navigating with your students to partner with you on certain things as they, matriculate or grow and expand in their field, to be mindful of. Let's get a couple more and then we'll go to the next piece.
Okay, so it's from the University LSAM Scholars, said institutional support, training, mentoring, and job satisfaction.
Yes.
Job
satisfaction is huge.
And then Helena said, as a student, I need more professors to understand different people have different learning styles, leniency in scheduling issues because life happens to all of us, and more support.
Huge. Do any of you want to talk about that, those three? Because I know you guys can relate to those two, about professors being aware of difference.
Yeah.
Oh, you can go.
No.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot, especially during COVID. Just kind of having my faculty kind of understand that people are going through a lot of different transitional things, being with COVID, and it's impacted everybody and their families. So just a little bit, I think that just kind of reminding the faculty that, just as they're going through things, students are also being majorly impacted by it and trying to stay afloat with completing their degree. So their main concern is to complete the degree, but how can we be more flexible to make sure that everybody's needs are getting met, even though we're learning virtually?
Excellent point.
Yeah,
and
I second that a lot. And then also, from the same perspective, and then also a different perspective, I work with a lot of undergrad students here in the lab, and then I teach courses here. And some of them are not online, virtual, let me sit on a Zoom learners. And so I had to adapt my teaching styles to help them to best learn and navigate. So they're not, I teach first semester freshmen, so it's like their first time in college. They still have that high school kind of mindset. And so like, you don't want their first grade to be an F just because it was the learning style that they didn't come from. So I think it's very important for, as students and also as teachers and mentors, to other people to really adapt to their learning style and help them be the best and most successful that they can be.
And I will say, I like that you said that, and we'll end on that piece and go to the next one. It is so important that adaptability tool, and to really, on both sides, right? Where students have to, if you're not familiar with Zoom, get familiar with Zoom, right? If you're not familiar with Teams or how you do things on your board or academic, get familiar. Go to the people that do it. There's people on your campus that do it. If you don't know how to do it, go do it, because the excuse of it will not exist. It will not stand, right? But then as a faculty, to understand that students may not go to those extra extents or strength to do that, to say, okay, what can I do in this amount of time? Because we don't have a lot of time as faculty. We need to go and go, right? But if I take the time on the front end, I can get more out of my students at the end. So, but I guess what? I expect my students to communicate. We are young adults, and I give real and honest conversations in these type of trainings. You must communicate now. If we don't learn to communicate what you need as a minority student, as a student of difference, you will fall behind, and it will be no one's fault but your own, because you did not communicate. And that's not fair. It's not fun to hear. It's not exciting to hear, but it is real, because you are working to be a global citizen in the world today. You are working to be able to go and get that career job, that job to pay off all these loans, right? And so at the end of the day, what you put in is going to impact your journey. Now, if there is inequitable practices happening, if they're discriminating against you, if they're not being mindful of your needs, if they're not considering what you're going through, we will talk about that in this training. We will talk about how to advocate for yourself, because we know that that happens. We know that there's racism. We know that there's sexism. We know that people that are coming from international backgrounds are being impacted, that speak a foreign language are being impacted. We know those things, and we're going to talk about that moving forward. The next three thing is, so we talked about what we needed, right? And I see some other ones that are in the chat that are excellent. CV, resume building, all of those that are, important, right? And so it is so important to also know that we not only have to receive what we need, we also have to give. So, in this space, it's so important as minority students, faculty, staff, those that are working with minority students, what will we give? Because we can't just build a ladder. We can't just be in an environment where we take, right? So once you get the knowledge of the education, once you get the access of how to write a CV, how to apply for a job, how to apply for a scholarship, once you get the time that you need to advocate, once you get those additional staff, once you get the opportunity to expand your understanding in STEM, are you just going to hold that for yourself? Are you just going to be that person that doesn't navigate or advocate for anybody? Or are you just going to be the one that graduates successfully, moves on to a great career, and doesn't give back to those that need? I hope not. I hope that that's not you today. So we want to talk about and speak out loud and advocate and declare 3 things that you want to give back. Once you have this access, once you have the career, once you expand, what are 3 things that you want to actually give back to the community in which you come from? Let's talk about that.
Should I share?
Sure, go. Whoever wants to go first. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so actually this makes me think about more recently. I've been working with Dr. Williams for a while. I'm so glad that she's always given me opportunities to speak with students, because it's given me the opportunity to work on my public speaking. And that's something I've been told her since I've met her, is that I really wanted to get involved and do more public speaking engagement opportunities. So since I am I'm still in the process of refining my public speaking skills, but more recently I decided to make a video on my platform just to give other tips or viewers on my platform the opportunity to just hear me, my tips that I've developed over time about public speaking, so that it can help someone else if they run across the video or something.
Excellent. Let me point out one thing that happened there. She needed, did we see that correspondence? She needed the support, right? So from what she needed, she then is giving back.
Right.
Do you see that? Woo, mind blowing, aha moment, right? She needed support. She needed that opportunity to public speak, because in STEM, you're going to present over and over and over again. But then she said she didn't just take that opportunity and just say, I'm good now, I can do it. Let me go be a consultant and get this money and go somewhere. She could, and she will, because that's going to be a part of the partnership. But at the end of the day, that's not all we're here for. I get to give. I teach. I learn to teach. So be mindful as you're writing in the chat, the 3 things that you're going to give back. What are you giving back? From what are you giving? What inner city school are you going to during your winter break? Teachers will love to hear. Yeah, we'll stop class to hear from college graduates or college students, to hear how they navigate it, to hear how math is fun and science is fun as a minority. Okay, so we have one more example. I need to see some more people in the chat. What do we give? We were so quick to say what we needed. We were writing novels, but what are we giving back? What are we giving back? Go ahead and put those 3 things in the chat, but go ahead and give your example.
Yes, I was just gonna say, I now am in a place where I can give back. So all the mentoring that I received when I was coming through undergrad as a 1st generation student, like I now try to give to the students who I teach. That's why I specifically, when I requested for a class, I said I want 1st semester freshmen so I can help them in that transition and see what they need. If they want to do STEM, they can, get resources for how to join a lab, how to do internships. I want to give all of the knowledge that I learned that people were so willing to give me. I want to give that back. Also, I spent a lot of time teaching people about mental illnesses. When I grew up, it's still very much a big stigma. Now people are more open to talk about it. And that's why I study it now, but I try to give back to the resources and kind of continue to demystify the stigma and push people to go and give help. So I try to give those things, because when I was growing up, I didn't specifically have them. And then someone saw that I had that need and gave it to me, and I want to give it back.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes. And we have a lot of things coming in the chat. So
very good. Let's hear it.
Susan said, lessons learned the hard way, mentoring, someone safe to talk to. Denise said time, support, resources. Casey.
You just mentioned a big one. Lessons learned the hard way. That's powerful. Who said that?
Susan.
Susan, hello. Thank you. Lessons learned the hard way. Give everyone a chance. Okay, that didn't work for you? Okay, what didn't work exactly? Take the pieces of what didn't work and go do it so it does work. That is excellent, and it's brave, and it's courageous, and it's helpful. So never be afraid to share. I didn't do well. You heard me give the example earlier. I thought the kids knew how, or the students knew how to fly. I didn't think that we took an hour and a half to get things ready. Not their fault. Whose fault? Mine. I assumed. I wasn't afraid to share that. I'm not afraid. So that when you're having students and we get to travel again with our students, you're a coordinator, you're checking those things. My mess up is your lesson, is your learned lesson. Excellent example. Let's share some more.
Casey said time, mentoring, connections.
Excellent.
Sarah said, I give patience and flexibility. Good leaders are flexible.
Patience is huge. We're going to talk about that when we talk about creating the narrative, but patience is huge. Sometimes our students don't come in the same spot. And as faculty, we'll talk about this a little more. I'm not going to step on my co-presenter's coattail with this, but as faculty, staff, and students, when we don't give the patience to the faculty as they're navigating the online section, or patience to them to get your grade back to you, right? Patience to them to help create time for you because they have a million things going on, but you feel like they don't have anything going on. You're not giving it, or the staff, you think that they just have nothing to do but twiddle their thumbs at the desk. You got to give them patience. You got to give them time. But then also in the reverse of that, if a student comes in and they just don't understand, carve some time out. It might not be in that minute. They may, I used to have students, and I still have students pop up right at my desk like, hey, Dr. J, can we do? And I'm like, did we set an appointment? Did you bypass the lady in the front? That's who schedules me, right? But at the end of the day, I had to say, hey, put them on the calendar, give them 45 minutes. I don't have 45 minutes to give them, but I'm going to figure it out. If I have to do something later, sometimes I have to sacrifice. Sometimes I have to give up some of the things I want to do to make sure that Black or brown or woman or student, international student succeeds, right? So giving patience and giving time is huge. Let's give one more and then we'll move to the next one because I don't want to run over. I'm already tuned in.
So many good ones here.
Yeah.
So, Jessica said students from underrepresented background may not know what questions to ask or where to ask them. I focus on creating tools to assess students' needs and help students learn what to ask as they navigate research and higher education.
That's very good.
Put an emoji in the chat for that, right? I saw somebody put a goat in there. I thought that was hilarious. But yes, that is so important. When to do things, when to apply for FAFSA, when to do the GRE, when to do this, when to apply for scholarships. Students miss things because they don't know when. And how would I know? I've never done it. I might be a first generational student. I've never done it. How do I know? Okay. So continue to look at those. If you're sitting here and you didn't type anything, take a look through the chat. Pick one or two out and identify a time to actually do them, okay? So this is excellent. I'm gonna pass it to my co-host who's gonna keep talking about these wonderful things and tips that you all can do.
Hi everyone, it's Naoko again. I wanted to begin our discussion about talking about 5 tips on how to advocate for yourself in connection to social justice and equity. Okay, so let's talk about tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to report racist teachers and students. So what I mean by that is that if you're going through any type of incident where it's making you feel uncomfortable, any attacks on your race, ethnicity, religion, things that make you who you are, you have the right to report anything from teachers or faculty or even students that you might have engaged with. And I encourage you to do so because that could potentially be a stopping point for the faculty or student to receive some further training on how not to, commit microaggressions to other minoritized students. So it's definitely a way to introduce training, the necessary training for certain faculty, and also necessary training for students to interact with other students. And if the university is not taking any actions, I suggest, following through the necessary procedures so that the issue is addressed. And if it's still not addressed, I just wanted to remind students that you have the right to file a discrimination complaint with the Office for Civil Rights through the U.S. Department of Education. Okay, now for tip number 2. Tip number 2 actually stems from an actual personal background of having another student, underrepresented student in STEM, give me any old course textbooks or articles. So I suggest, if you know of any other underrepresented students in the sciences, that if you have any old textbooks and you don't mind giving them away, please do. If there's an underclassman that is, also underrepresented, they might need those textbooks or those resources to, successfully complete their course. So why not give something away instead of just having the textbook, collect dust? Also spread awareness to other students about, resources such as the Center for Career and Professional Development. I definitely utilized this resource when I was an undergrad student. I didn't come from a very privileged background of having all the necessary tools to, successfully, have an interview with internships or scholarship programs. So that center was really helpful for me. They, have a variety of gently used clothes for interview wear. They have opportunities for you to practice with other faculty or people who are volunteer their services when it comes to editing your resume, your personal statement. So they literally are a great tool for any students who are just looking to, refine those skills so that you can get the job, you can get those research programs. And also this also extends to talking to students. If you know that, there's a food pantry on campus and a student might be struggling with making sure they're getting an adequate amount of meals, why not suggest to them, hey, check out the food pantry. I go there all the time. I can pick up regular day-to-day stuff. But just certain resources that are on campus that are helpful for any student who are, having their needs not met or they don't have the financial resources to do so. I encourage you to spread all types of resources. So let's not limit it to just scholarships and internships.
And I will add one thing to that is, sometimes some of us may say, well, what do the resources and the professional development really have to do with our students? But when I'm hungry and I'm in class, I can't focus. When I'm not dressed appropriately for a presentation, I feel less than. When I don't have the access to textbooks, I'm behind. Right? So all of these things play into our social justice and advocate. We have to be advocates for our students, right? We can't always go in our, closet and do different things, or we can, right? I used to give suits and all this kind of stuff to students all the time, or find resources for their size, or do that because I want them to win. And when they stand up and present, I want them to be the best at it. So as advocates, and even as students, don't just think that it's the faculty or staff or administrator's job, but if that's your friend and you're co-presenting and you know that there's an event on campus where there's food, tell them that. So that they have the food, because we know students, they serve food on campus for events. I used to do it all the time. And they used to say in our budget, I'd find the money. I go play golf with a coordinator and find some money. Why? Because I need some food at my event, because I need my students to eat. I need them to be prepared. It's that additional step. It's that additional mindset that is not just better for them as individuals, but it's going to be better for them in the STEM space. So I just wanted to add that as a rationale as well.
And just like I just stated with sharing your resources, I wanted to share some of my resources. So during undergrad, I had the opportunity of being a Minority Health International Research Training Program undergrad student researcher. I'm so sorry, that was backwards. Undergrad and student researcher in the Minority Health International Research Training Program. And I want to highlight this program for any students who are looking for opportunities to participate in research. So I highlight this program because I actually had the opportunity to travel to St. Kitts and Nevis for 3 months and live there while I conducted research on a longitudinal study related to type 2 diabetes. And that was really eye-opening for me and a lot of other students who never actually got to travel internationally to another country. And so, just applying to those opportunities and not believing those self-limiting beliefs that you might get, like, oh, there's no way they're going to pick me, because that's actually something that was going through my head when I was applying to this program. There's no way. But actually I got accepted. But yeah, it was a very unique experience. It, brought me some cultural awareness about different cultures, how to navigate when you're conducting research in a different country. But yeah, those are some great programs that I've been involved with. These are some organizations that I have been a part of. I've been a part of LSMRCE, which was life-changing. I probably wouldn't be where I am today without LSMRCE, so I'm extremely grateful. I forgot to also put on here that I was also an LSMRCE Bridge to Doctorate Fellow. So having that support, through undergrad and then also through my graduate program is, led to where I am today. So that's why I emphasize a lot on LSMRCE students. Ronald E. McNair Scholars Program is another program similar to LSMRCE, federally funded program, emphasizing on providing support for our underrepresented students in STEM. And that was really great because they provided tools to apply for graduate school. They had somebody look over our graduate school applications. We had GRE, a prep class, so that was really helpful. Society for Integrative and Comparative Biology. Just like Dr. Williams says, like, you have to advocate for yourself, you have to network with other people. And actually I was networking with the PI I was working with in a lab one summer, and she told me to join this organization, and that led to more opportunities to present for free. So that was a very unique experience, to be able to travel to San Francisco and present my my latest research to a bunch of colleagues that are coming from major universities. There's professionals. So I encourage you to see how you can get involved with different societies. And here are some great sites to find scholarships. We have also, I forgot to mention, look at your bulletin board. There's sometimes the bulletin boards within the department hallways, and sometimes our faculty love to post, different scholarship, internships, different opportunities. So do not bypass those bulletin boards. But yeah, here's a list of different websites. If you can just take a picture and use it for your reference later. Oh, and my tip number 3. So another big tip is to join programs such as LSMRCE. That's where you're going to find all your resources and tools and mentorship opportunities, is to join programs such as LSMRCE. And also I want to emphasize to get involved. When I joined LSMRCE at JCSU, I made sure that I was building an actual relationship, a professional relationship with the program coordinator and director of the program. Why? Because I knew that if I built a professional relationship with the 2 people over the program, that it could potentially lead to me speaking to other students once I was in the predicament to give back, or the fact that I wanted to apply to the LSMRCE Bridge to Doctorate program. Since I had a really professional relationship with the director, he was still calling me after I graduated from JCSU to just see how was my progress, what programs did I apply to, what programs I got accepted into. And so he's actually the reason why I'm probably at Howard University and was an LSMRCE Bridge to Doctorate Fellow. I was working at Starbucks and he called me and he was just like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I really don't know what's going on in my life." And he was like, "Let me get you together, send me your personal statement. There's a great opportunity at Howard. I know you want to attend another HBCU. Why don't you apply to that program?" I was like, there's no way they're going to give me this fellowship. And, things work out in your favor. So that's why I encourage you to have those professional relationships. My 4th tip is to put your university on the map. So sometimes we're actually the first students to apply to certain research programs or scholarships. You'll be really, really surprised about some programs that'll be like, oh, this is my first time having, I guess a diverse set of students in their programs. Or, you're the first student who attended a HBCU that is now part of this program, this research program. And so that's a great way to, advocate for yourself, advocate for other people who look like you, underrepresented in the sciences. And I had put a picture of a person who actually, his name is Noah Harris. He actually attends Harvard University. He recently was elected as the first Black person to be elected as the vice president. And so I put him up there as an example of how he's just creating revolutionary change within the Harvard campus, bringing to light social inequities, injustices that are being done to, Black and brown people. So using his platform for the betterment of, the community. So yeah, that's one good example. And tip number 5, I would say, is to create your own platform. So I actually never thought I would be in the predicament to create a platform, but I realized that, once I started my PhD journey, that, wow, that took a lot of people actually to help me get to where I am today. There's people from high school, elementary school that honestly all contributed to where I am. And so why not be in the space to give back? So it's not just to help me get to where I am, but to also help others, during their journey. And so when I decided to embark on my PhD journey, I created Life with Naoko channel, which is basically demonstrating how it is to be an underrepresented student in the sciences, to encourage other underrepresented students to pursue their PhD in the sciences. And also just like some cool, fun things about me is just food. I love food and self-care. I heavily believe in self-care, especially in these really rigorous programs. But yeah, create a platform to reach your audience. Okay, so next I will discuss how do you navigate when you're the only one. And so there's been multiple instances in my experience as a STEM student where I had to navigate when I was the only one. And so this started off with kind of learning my coping mechanisms. And several things that I do are talk with family and friends. So there was one instance in particular where I was the only Black student in a internship, lab-based internship. And I felt totally out of place because I didn't have any type of experience working in the lab. I didn't know how to use the most basic things in the lab, like a pipette. I was just completely lost and overwhelmed about, how am I going to perform well if I don't know all of these things. But luckily I was, fortunate to work under a PI who, just kind of talked me through. But on the other end of things, to make sure my emotional needs were met, I was just, calling my mom, venting to my mom, talking to my friends. But even if you don't have that group available, find your group, find your affinity group on the campus that you can identify with so that you can, meet those needs and you can get through those programs. I'm also big on affirmations. We just recently talked about this before our presentation about how Post-its are really helpful. Post-its to reaffirm yourself. Like, if you're doing any type of lab work and you get home and you're so frustrated because you're like, okay, there's a journal club coming up and I don't know how to read any scientific literature like that, like very good at it. Put some Post-it notes around, your study space to tell you can do it. It's gonna get better. Things are gonna get a lot easier if I just sit with the material. Things that are encouraging and enlightening when you're reading or studying. And just affirm yourself that you belong here just as anyone else in this program. You deserve a seat. They picked you, so you are not an imposter. There's not going to be somebody's going to take the rug from underneath you and say, there's no way you're accepted. You deserve a seat. Also remind yourself the value of this what opportunity that you're engaging in. So if you know that you were lacking a lot of lab experience, which I was lacking so much lab experience. And so even though it was super hard to get through that program because I felt like the only one, I'm so proud of myself to say I stuck through it. Because why? In the long term, it helps me. Because why? Now I'm in a program program where it's nothing but lab research. And so now I had that experience from an undergrad student. So being the only one and getting through that and pushing myself to get through that has only propelled me to reach my long-term goals. And that's also in relation to build. So building your social capital. Building your social capital is like networking with other individuals, not being scared to be the only one in certain spaces, because why? We want to create change in the long run. So we want to build our social capital. We want to be networking, taking opportunities to engage with other people that are in the positions that we want to be in potentially. And then also allowing yourself to feel through those emotions. It kind of goes back to affirming. So for instance, you know, I would cry while working in the lab because I was so frustrated about not understanding things as more quickly as other undergrad students. And especially was more intimidating because they were underclassmen and they could get things more easily, but they also had tons of laboratory experience. But I allowed myself to feel through those emotions. I allowed myself to cry in the lab sometimes. Hopefully no one saw me. And even after, but just allowing those emotions to, you know, process, and then also remind yourself that you can't give up, because if there's so many other people behind you that are looking towards you for inspiration and motivation to continue going. You never know who's really watching you, and that includes your siblings. That includes distant friends you haven't spoken to in 5 years. It'd be like, I'm so proud of you, all the things that you're doing, and you're like, I'm doing a good job. I am doing a good job. So be just mindful that be mindful that, you know, there are other people who are looking to you to pave the way for them. And that can be in different areas. It doesn't have to be in the sciences. It can be somebody who's in education that might look up towards you, or vice versa. We all play off of one another. So let's change the narrative. Let's talk about how we change the narrative. I'm pretty sure everybody has, you know, changed the narrative in some form or another, but I'm sorry, let me get myself this mask. So changing the narrative is talking about what are the things that we do to cope with how we, you know, change the narrative so we can push forward. So a lot of different things are, you know, obstacles that we are faced with as underrepresented students require us to change the narrative within ourselves so that we can deal with the obstacles presented. I would like to first talk about some student backgrounds and just how they navigated through being the only one, how they use their diversity to their advantage and not their detriment. And so I had the opportunity of, you know, just quickly interviewing some students that I know. And so we'll start off with Tina. So Tina got her bachelor's in biology from Winston State University. She is a current second year pharmacology student at UNC Chapel Hill. And so some of the major hurdles that she talked about were being faced with multiple microaggressions from her peers or her faculty members. And that made her actually question, you know, why is she even in this graduate program? But I love how she, you know, then went in to talk about how she reminded herself that she deserves the spot that she's in. Just kind of like how we had talked about, you know, you have to affirm yourself that I believe and I know that I'm capable of what is on my plate. I'm able to handle everything that's given to me. You can probably go to the next person. Okay, Brenda. Brenda is one of my dearest friends that I actually had the opportunity of participating in multiple different programs with and competitions with. But through those competitions and programs, I learned so much about her. So she's actually, let me introduce her, her background. She got her bachelor's in biology from Johnson C. Smith University. She's a former LSMRCE scholar and a former Ronald E. McNair scholar. And so through those programs that Brenda and I participated in, I started to understand some of the obstacles that she faced that are a lot different than what I faced. So she's a DACA student. And so as a DACA student, it's really hard to attain any type of loans, like the federal loans that, you know, our US citizens are be eligible for. And so that is a major hurdle for her to even get any, you know, actual assistance, financial assistance throughout her undergrad program. Unfortunately, she was able to, run across some other individuals who were having the same obstacles and, receive scholarships. So she was a scholarship recipient all throughout her undergrad experience, and she's currently trying to figure out how to attain funding for medical school, which is even harder because, as we all know, medical school is extremely expensive. So imagine taking out private student loans for medical school, and it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous how the obstacles differ depending on the student. And, so being cognizant and being aware and talking to other students to understand what their obstacles are can be really helpful. And one of the obstacles she had to face during our undergrad experience was applying to different programs because a lot of the programs were accepting international students. So if you know that and you're a friend that just talks to, somebody casually in the sciences, learning about that could be your opportunity to be like, oh, you know what? I found this one internship that's accepting international students. Let me send it to Brenda. But yeah, so facing that obstacle. Christopher T. Finley Jr., he graduated from Prairie View A&M University Chemical Engineering class of 2018. He is currently a senior production engineering for Dow Chemical Company. And actually, so he faced a lot of different issues with having resources. And I know that's something that a lot of underrepresented students have trouble with, finding resources. But he really, in his statements, he really advocated with, even though I knew I didn't have resources, I decided to network with people. I decided to network with people on my campus. I decided to network with people on LinkedIn. I decided to look at YouTube videos, anything to kind of further help me figure out how I can be senior production engineering. He actually had that opportunity after speaking to multiple people after conferences, and he was successfully secured a really good position as a production engineer. And that was one of his major testimonies of how I come, as a student coming from a lack of resources, how he decided to bridge the gap, change the narrative. Paloma is a really good friend I've actually had since elementary school. So Paloma is a person an individual who actually faces a lot of health issues being a student. So she has to go through a lot of chemotherapy treatments while being a student. So as you may know, that is very difficult for somebody to, continue through school and their education and still graduate with the time that they have, with the finances they have too, let's be mindful. With also dealing with, health issues with having to go to campus and still, attend school, but also have treatment. But the thing about that is I love when I was talking to her, she brought awareness about how, some professors or faculty are not cognizant all about, what your health conditions may entail, but it's still up to their discretion about how to deal with that. So I encourage any faculty that have any students that are dealing with health issues to figure out a best course to fit their needs, because they truly do need a lot of support, because anybody can think about how hard it is just to sit through classes and lectures, and you also have major health issues that are preventing you from learning as efficiently or effectively as any other student. This is also my friend, Linwood Robinson. He's a software engineer. He graduated from Johnson C. Smith University. He has his degree in information systems engineering, and he's also a former LSMRCE scholar. And so Linwood, just kind of like me, comes from a multi-racial background. And so he talked about how he navigated being a biracial student, being that, sometimes you don't feel like as maybe you identify mainly with one identity than the other, but it's still good to still engage with societies and organizations that also represent us. And so he talked about how he joined a plethora of different organizations that fit, his multiple identities. And I thought that was very interesting because it kind of, I related it back to me, how I'm also Asian American and African American, and I, specifically engage in social justice work when it comes to, things that are also affecting Asian Americans, being that I was predominantly raised by a Japanese woman, a Japanese immigrant. woman from Hiroshima, Japan. So learning how to, use all of your identities to your advantage, not your detriment, and engaging with, people who look like you, people who can relate to you, and also propel you to where you need to go when you're trying to meet your long-term goals. And so now I wanted to discuss some things faculty and staff can do to support underrepresented students in STEM. So for one, definitely become an ally. So even if you don't come from the same background as your students, majority of your students, or just even some of your students, a great way is just to, talk and discuss, build a relationship with, your students, to learn their backgrounds, to learn the, financial obstacles, the health issues, the mental health issues they have to they have to deal with on a daily basis. You never know if, some of your students might have parents who have mental health issues, things that are just, impacting their way or their ability to sit in your class and actually learn. So become an ally. And by becoming an ally, you can volunteer your assistance to affinity groups on campus. You can also make, donations to these groups. Inform your students. So what I mean by informing your students is that I actually, when I was at Johnson C. Smith University, I still look back at this moment. My organic chem professor, the first day of class, I remember her, welcoming everybody, but she said, now, if any of you guys are applying to any research programs or internships this year, I want you to know that I am open to writing a letter of recommendation on your behalf. And that really created that still lasted with, that still made an impact on me to this day, because when I was in high school, I was actually one of 5 Black students in my university. So I definitely felt like I was navigating being the only one sometimes. And it was actually really hard for me to get letters of recommendation from faculty and staff at my high school. So just going into another different space and having a faculty member just say, hey, I'm open to it. And they actually stuck by their word, because when I decided, throughout the course, I decided, hey, Dr. Brown, actually, I do need a letter of recommendation letter. And she really sat down with me, looked over my resume, even gave me feedback on my resume. That was helpful, but just helping me tweak my personal statement, and just offering the assistance was really beneficial. So yeah, that also goes along with what I put underneath, just helping students with their individual needs when it comes to their personal statements, because they might not have the accessibility to another trusted individual to say, hey, can you look at this before I submit it? You can also mentor former students. So a lot of the faculty member that I engaged with when I was an undergrad student, they actually became really lifelong mentors. So it was probably more for an informal mentorship relationship, but it was still very much impactful, because I know that I still have all their contact information. I can still email them to this day and say, hey, I'm applying to this one program. Do you mind, finding your letter of recommendation you wrote a couple years ago, and we can tweak it accordingly to what program I want to apply to now. Recycle things that you have to use it to your benefit. But also donating old textbooks and articles can be helpful for students. A lot of faculty members within my own department right now, they give me old textbooks now, which are super helpful. Build rapport with your students. So when you're opening conversations up with students, that may be the way for you to understand some of the needs that need to be met, so that they can be better equipped to successfully complete their degree program. So and through that relationship, you can be forwarding opportunities to participate in other programs. I know sometimes faculty members get emails from other colleagues that have, hey, do you have any students that are interested in, doing research in this program, or, applying to this scholarship? By you forwarding those opportunities to all your students and all your former students can be a good entryway into making sure that they're able to complete their degree. So next I will discuss, so what is an ally? So an ally is someone who has a privilege but chooses to stand in with marginalized communities by taking tangible ongoing actions to dismantle systems of oppression. So next I will discuss 10 things that all allies can do. Okay, so for one, you can listen. So listen to understand, to not be understood. I'm still constantly working on that myself, but that is definitely something that we all have to be accountable for, just to listen to other people's needs, listen to what the obstacles that they face. Sometimes people really just need a listening ear so that they have, ways to unload the, various different struggles that they're going through. Get educated. So if you know that you're not very equipped to support the way that you need to support a marginalized student, figure out some books and things, books or articles that you can be reading to better equip to, help those students. Get involved. So what I mean by getting involved is that, you see a student, you're talking to a student and they said, I have like a football game coming up, or, things that you can be doing to show up for them. So get involved and show up is kind of like the same thing. Showing up for your students. If you know that you have some time to go sit and watch somebody's orchestra concert, why not do that for a student? Showing that support, because they might not get that support on the back end from friends and family. We never know anybody's family dynamics, how they're being supportive through certain transitional periods within the college setting. So being there. Okay, so next, okay, or should I go ahead? Okay.
Sorry, just click back. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So speak up. So I love as an undergrad student seeing various different faculty members on their downtime show up to different protests that we had on campus, different rallies, just to show their support. And it also just showed an alliance of like, I hear you, I see you, and I'm going to show up for you. And welcome discomfort, even if you don't know something. We don't know everything about everybody's obstacles, situations. So be aware of that, be cognizant of it, but be open to learning about those different things, and learning from your mistakes. So if I do, speak to another underrepresented student and I have the concept or things that they've stated wrong, being open to learning from my mistakes so that I don't reiterate something, that is not going to be receptive to other people or other marginalized people. So being accepted to like be corrected, and stay engaged. So staying engaged means like, if you see that on your campus, they're having various different events, for the African-American students, for the Mexican-American students, Asian-American, stay engaged with those different groups, figure out how you can best support those groups, how you can best support the students in your courses that are part of those groups, and donate. So anything that you have, any resources, I know that a lot of faculty members are really good on, public speaking, doing presentations. What if you could be a panelist for a certain organization that needs somebody to speak, about a certain topic? You might be a point of contact, but also making yourself, exposing yourself to those students and be like, hey, look, I have this, I will help you with this. Let me help you with setting up, tearing down, different things. Okay, so now we will begin our little virtual engagement activity. If you can all take out your phone and just use the camera and just use the QR code, it will take you directly to a link where we will be playing a virtual engagement activity. I'll give you guys a few moments to do so. But I'll talk about how we're gonna do this. So I wanted to have kind of a discussion with all the students and faculty members about, some personal fears that we all face, because as underrepresented students in the sciences, I know that a lot of the things that come with social justice, it relates to our fears about why we're not, making strides or it's just very overwhelming to, you know, be an underrepresented student and feel like you're lacking resources. You're feeling like, you know, you're the only one. But we have a lot of fears associated with making sure that, you know, we're not giving too much into our fears that are preventing us from, you know, doing the work that's necessary so that we can, you know, have more people behind us also follow suit. So I wanted everyone to basically write down a personal fear of yours, and how, or if, you know, you can also share if you're not feeling like you're able to overcome this fear. Oh, thank you guys. You guys are really fast. And I know it's okay if you don't have a way to overcome this fear. We can talk about, you know, how we're trying to overcome our own personal fears. Ooh, I see a really good one. I don't talk the science language. I had to deal with that myself. Being a PhD student coming straight from my bachelor's degree, I was not equipped to, you know, handle some of the jargon or understand some of the jargon when it came to science articles or research articles. But that's a major big fear of mine. But one fear, how I overcome that fear is just making sure that I reach out to one of the faculty members that I feel like I can identify more with and can understand some of the things that are making me not feel as equipped to handle journal clubs or journal articles. And so by just talking to them after hours and telling them, hey, can you go through an article with me? Can you point some things out of like, what am I not missing when it comes to understanding these concepts or these graphs, or what are they talking about?
I see another one, and that meeting expectations, right? The expectations of what STEM is and what we're required to do. And it may not be hired because of my race or ethnicity.
Ooh, I also
part
see
of what you do. Yeah, that's huge. Because a lot of times minorities feel that they have to work twice as hard, right? I know I felt that in my career, academic career, where, you know, I need to double, triple check everything that I'm doing. When I get up, I need to be really knowledgeable about what's going on. While that prepared me, how much stress did I go through because of that, right? How much anxiety did I put on myself because of that, right? These are very good.
Oh, I see another one. Fear of missing an opportunity for missing a deadline or not having enough time to make a good application. I had to learn that the hard way too, about missing opportunities with not, you know, being proactive on making deadlines, but I have a good way of dealing with that. I actually created an entire binder filled with research opportunities that I want to apply to fellowships, and just being aware and cognizant of when the application season starts. So if you know that in the next year you need a fellowship or you need a scholarship to get you through the next year, be mindful of like, okay, I know that application season starts June or July. When it's January of the beginning of the year, go through some opportunities, randomly bookmark anything that you find on Google, and then print them out. You know, even if you don't have a printer, you can have a folder on your computer with all of the different things. Then on top of that, you can, you know, to be more organized, have a binder, print out all the applications, highlight the deadline, highlight when the deadline for the letters of recommendation due, highlight when does that transcript need to be sent by. And then now you have a way, you're at least 3 months in advance before you're submitting the application. And then 2, you have a binder where you can go to find all that information. And it's not, oh my gosh, I don't remember this, you know? And also making fake deadlines. Fake deadlines help all the time. So if you know that the deadline is June 26th, tell yourself that it is June 24th or June 23rd, you know, just go with it. And if people keep correcting it, I don't want to hear it. It's June 23rd. That's when I'm going to submit it, because I know if I prepare in advance, I'm going to have a successful application.
I see imposter syndrome here, like several. Go through and like everybody read what you go through. These are phenomenal. Okay. Imposter syndrome is huge, right? The thought that I don't think I deserve to be there, or are they going to find out that I'm not good enough? Be mindful that you're there. So this is your time to shine. You are, the competition is you. So be mindful as you go through the spots of discomfort, that every mistake I make is another opportunity to learn. I'm going to get past that mistake. And by God, by the next time I do, I'm going to learn from it. Now, don't be that person that's repeat, if you miss the deadline this time, don't miss the deadline next time, right? Take ownership of our work, but being mindful that you're here for a reason. She said that a little bit earlier. You're here for a reason, represent. My dad, when I got to Johnson C. Smith, you hear the connection, you've heard Smith a lot today, which I'm excited about. When he dropped me off, he kind of cornered me. This happened to me on my undergraduate, my master's, and my doctorate. He put me in the corner and I was like, yes, sir. And he said, represent. You right now you're carrying my last name. And you represent everywhere you go. You represent, for me, you're taking my name and going further, right? So how many of us have family members? How many of us have teachers, advocates that we're representing what they've done? That might not be our parents. It might be a mentor. It might be an aunt. It might be an uncle. It may be that teacher, maybe that soccer coach that said, I don't know what the heck science is, but I'm going to help you. I'm going to find somebody. You're paying them back. You are here for a purpose, and when you win, you got to look back and help somebody else win. So this has been excellent. We'll continue to look into the answers here and go through. But I want to provide an opportunity for each of you to ask questions in the chat. We're coming up to about 15 minutes before we close out. If you have questions about anything that we've talked about, if you want some additional strategy or conversation, I have a couple more points that I want to bring out to you all, but I don't want to miss your question. So go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat, and all three of us are here to support you in your answers. So as I go, it doesn't bother me. Go ahead and put some questions in the chat, and then we'll make sure that we address them in just a few moments. As we navigate, let's just, she did just such a good job. This is the example of when we talk about imposter syndrome. Naoku said, I just can't do it. I don't know. I'm not sure. And look how good she did. Awesome. This is a student, both of my ladies, both of them have done a great job today. And I say that because that could be you. You could be a student or a faculty or staff in this audience, and you're saying, I can't, how am I going to do this? When did I have the time? I didn't have the time. Right now, after this presentation, I have a million things to do. Just like many of you looking into the screen, you're like, okay, I told Deb, or I said I was going to do this, but after this, I've got to jet. But we want this to be a value, and we hope that it's been a value to you, or at least you leave encouraged and inspired to be an advocate in this space. So let's just talk just a little bit. Let's kind of do a recap, right? When we look at the ideology of systemic oppression and oppression within the STEM space, right? It's really on a systemic level. So globally, there's different policies and procedures or different actions that take place that impact us on a systemic level, right? And then it goes into an organizational level where we start looking at it in terms of organization as our institution, right? So our universities are, places of fellowship, organizations that takes place. So some of the practices that we only get students with a 3.0, or we only get students from this dynamic, those play into, whether we want to admit it or not. I've worked in higher ed for over 10 years, and I can tell you that there are some systemic and organizational and institutional oppressions that happen. When students come in, I had 2 this summer. I'm not going to name the universities, but they were big universities, and I made a claim and call in, because what we're not going to do as an organizational or an institution is bombard a student so that they don't succeed. You will see students of color, you will see women, you will see students of ability or disability, and that's important, right? Because the only way we're going to see you in the field, the only way we're going to see you on the job is to advocate for you in the institutional level. But to give an example of this is the student was having some difficulties in communicating, and the faculty, whether they knew that they were being heard or not, only said, I only want students that are equipped to do the research. I don't have time to prepare students that are not on the level. Well, what is on the level, right? What is on the level? If you're here to be an educator, Take a moment, because we all may be guilty of it. If we're here to be an educator, if we're here to be an advocate for our students in this space, when a student does not come in as prepared as we think they should come in, as prepared as the traditional students that's come in. And what do we know the traditional student to be? The majority, right? So when students come in that are a minority, the students that come in that have a disability, that are international, and they look different, they talk different, and you have to take time and have a little bit more patience, what does that look like? So that's oppression on the organizational and the institutional level. Then we become individual, where, you know what, I'm not going to give you extra time for that test. Every student has 20 to 30 minutes to take that quiz. But if I'm dyslexic, but if I need, if I have a disability, or if I'm English is my second language, am I really being equitable? And let's spin that. Let's not just put it on the faculty, the staff, or the administrators. Students, if you have a learning disability, are you telling somebody? Are you telling the coordinator you don't know how to do something? Remove the pride. Are you telling them that you need, because if you want to win, if you want to be successful, that's only if you want to be that. If you want to be average and you don't want to do it, then you don't have to ever tell them. And you can struggle and you're going to be in that moment. But if you're really advocating for your own justice, for your own success, for your own mindfulness, then you are going to speak up and say, I need longer on my test. And if they don't do it, then you go through the resources that we talked about earlier to do it. Because guess what? When you provide those opportunities and create those avenues of conversation, those students that come behind you that need additional time, that need additional support with writing a letter, they will get that support because it's in my brain now. Oh, some faculty, some people, I didn't even know to think about that. I'm sorry, let me do that, right? So let's use our voice on either side of the house to navigate. And you look at so that's a level of oppression. So systemic, organizational, and individual. Let's get out of this mess, right? As an individual, if I don't speak up, I'm not going to have liberation. As an institution, if I'm sitting among faculty, among administrators that are not advocating, I remember when working with within the STEM space, and the definition of minority kept changing. What is minority? What is this? What is that? Why we want to be inclusive, we don't want to be so inclusive that we're excluding the populations that we need to support. If you're at that table and you're letting that conversation just go by and not advocating for students of difference, then we need to take the opportunity to do so. This is the time. This is the reminder. This is the bell. This is the wake-up call that if I'm an administrator, if I'm a coordinator, are we putting things in our programs to advocate for students? Am I allotting time for GRE prep? Am I sitting down? I used to have monthly one-on-ones with my scholars to make sure that they understood where we were coming from, okay? So that our program was efficient and effective, and we weren't just doing it to get it done. Right? We took the time to plan, and then guess what? I empowered the students. Find some speakers that you need, because I may not always know your speakers. You go find the speakers. Took a load off me. Listen to me, administrators. Took a load off me. They found them. I vetted them. Okay, make sure LinkedIn is there. Let me check out a couple videos. Let me do that. But when the speaker came, it was impactful. Right? So don't just think that it has to be you. Don't just think it has to be your staff. Put your students to work. I put these two young ladies to work today. I said, hey, I need voices every part of this presentation, because guess what? My voice is not going to be the only one that matters. Somebody wants to meet both of them after this, and you should. Somebody should be networking with both of them after this session. Somebody should be saying, you know what? She has a YouTube channel. I want to start one. I'm a Latina student. They have never seen anything like this. We need your voice, right? So move out of that, move into liberation in terms of your individual status, organization. And as you begin to do it, we will see changes in institutions. We will see changes as we move up. It's not going to be overnight, although we wish it would be, but it's not going to be overnight. So be mindful of that process. And then just know that it is, the cycle of access. So access is you understand today, then you move into involvement, and then you move into progression. Now what, right? So we talk about personal branding, right? As I close out, and I'm going to get to it so we can answer questions. Who are you? in how, who you are and what you stand for and what is unique about you, you need to use as your access. If you're a minority student, they're giving scholarships to minority students. Don't look at that as I came from a socioeconomic background that's lower or poor. Oh, guess what? They have scholarships for that. Don't look at that as a negative thing. That's an access. That's an opportunity to get into the door. And then what do you stand for? Once you get in the door, what are you doing about it? How are you advocating for somebody else? And then when you look at what's unique about you, that's your leverage. That's what I use in personal statements. That's what I use in interviews. That's what I use to communicate nobody can be me. Right? And that's not arrogance, by God, by no means. But when I get in the door, when it's time for me to apply for a scholarship, no one can be me. That's how we got to think. I'm an African-American woman with a lot to offer. You don't have any African-American women. How can I sit at the table? And then when I'm at the table, because let me tell y'all, I'm getting at some tables right now. But when I get at them tables, the door is open behind me and I'm pulling people in. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Move, move, move. Have a seat. Because so many times at the table, there were not people that looked like me, making decisions for me. Okay, and you're making decisions for me and I am not impacted in the best way. Students with a disability are not impacted. We need your voice. If you have a disability and you are a student, a faculty, a staff, are you communicating that? If you feel comfortable, are you communicating that with your student so that they can feel that they're not alone? I love when she mentioned mental health. That's one of the number one illnesses in today's society. So if we're advocating for that space, if we're sitting around tables advocating for those differences, international students, DACA students, are we advocating for those? International students, how are we doing that? So make sure that you build your own brand by understanding the unique platform that you offer. Areas of contribution, K through 12, undergraduate, graduate level, postdoctorate, faculty looking at different avenues, outreach, educational opportunities. Never underestimate the aspect of professional development and enrichment. When we go to these resources here, I'm actually getting, after I leave this session today, this is called the Intercultural Development Inventory. If you are a faculty, staff, or student on this line and you have not taken IDI, I am waiting on you. This is a tool to assess where we are, right? I took this, I'm very versed in diversity. I love it. I'm advocating for it. But when I took my assessment and I got my results back and we began to go through the training, I had to sit back and look at some biases that I didn't know I had. Uh-oh, the lady teaching diversity had biases? Yes. Right. And so as I navigated that process, I said, oh, I'm not, that bias could impact me working with this type of student, or that bias could impact me. So if I want to be the best educator, if I want to be the best student, I need to know who I am and where the gaps are. And you don't boil an ocean overnight. You do it one piece at a time, right? You take the time to do it. If it's this year, you're working on this. Next year, you're working on that. Don't think that you have to do it all the time. And then just the implicit assessment, that's through Harvard University, you're able to do that as well. Okay, so if you're interested in those opportunities, definitely let us know. Our information is here below. Reach out to us. Okay, reach out to us. We're here to support you. We're here as a network. And if you need anything from us, we're here. We're going to end this slide now. I want to hear your voices. If you can, I'd like to see your faces in this Zoom world. I don't get to see as many faces as I'd like. And the faces that I am seeing, I'm so happy to see. Thank you for being with us. We have some questions. Let's go ahead and start with the first one.
Yes, so the first question was your contact references. So
oh, I didn't put that back up.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask, if you could just throw that.
Yes, I can.
And then Dominique, I saw that you had your hand raised. Did you want to ask your question? No, maybe not. Okay, Well, I don't have any questions right now, but if anybody wanted to raise their hand and unmute, um, after we call on you, we'd be very happy to take your question. We did have a comment that they very much enjoyed the session and you made them more comfortable in their own skin as an Asian American.
Excellent.
I have a question.
Yes.
First, I want to thank you. My name is Latricia Hilton. So thank you both, Ms. Jackson, Little Jackson and Ms. Dr. Williams, for the time that you put into developing this for this conference and for the students and faculty here. I work with students that are from diverse backgrounds, as you've highlighted, and building their stamina in this race of endurance. How you touched on some of those points here. And so from the student perspective and from your perspective institutionally, how do we get the institution to support us? Because that last slide that you showed, the oppression is still going on, no matter how much you do individually. Because as a faculty or staff person, you go out and fight and you come back with battle wounds, and then you have to turn around and help the student. And you sometimes you can't let them know the battle wounds that you are having to deal with. So how do you recommend that we actually help the students with that stamina, and also for our own selves in dealing with that?
Dynamic question. And I think, students, either way, we can all answer in our own ways. Sometimes I didn't get the institutional win. I'm going to be honest, right? And I was angry about it. I was disappointed in my university. I was disappointed in the system in which I worked. But my win was the individual win with the student. Right? Getting to know the student and knowing their need and knowing where they came from and making sure that they got to where they wanted to go. Sometimes all I had was the goal of the student, and that's to go to graduate school. That was to go to get an internship so that they can have networking experience. And my win was them getting accepted. My win was them getting the scholarship. And I had, and we can't negate the small wins. I'm especially after last summer, let's be transparent, because I don't know any other way to be. I was exhausted. We're exhausted, period. But last summer, I was more exhausted being me and then advocating for students, right? But my win was seeing 5 of my students go to graduate school debt-free. My win was them getting writing an excellent personal statement, because I invested the time and I invested the patience in them. So I may not win and then I tell them what I'm doing for them. Sometimes our war wounds are held alone and they never get to see. Now, some things are not appropriate for me to share with a student, as you have mentioned. But sometimes I can say, I'm frustrated. I'm trying to advocate for this space, and sometimes it's difficult. And guess what? Our students are smarter than we think. They can read between the lines. And in between those lines, they take that baton and they go fight a fight I can't fight. I'm not giving them all the go report this, go report that. That's their choice. That's what we gave tools today for them to do that. Because sometimes a student's voice is louder than mine will ever be. But just remember, I just want to encourage you that as you have small wins, that's the victory. Because the seed that I sowed today will grow tomorrow. I hope that's helpful.
To add what Dr. Williams said, I actually have seen that with my faculty at Howard, how they try to advocate for us students. And, you don't even have to disclose everything that you're doing, but the students do see you doing it. So I recognize that my dean of my department, he has a lot of people up against him why we can't get more funding for our labs, why we don't have the best, latest equipment. So I recognize that. But just what Dr. Williams says, I try to do my own way of advocating for other students too. So your motivation, even if you can't see it.
And it sounds small, right? It sounds like, okay, we're just motivated, but it's so big. I had another student that, we were talking among colleagues. She's a Latina student. She went to University of Florida, and she was meeting with a faculty student that was a Latina as well. And she told her, I'm here for you, but I'm exhausted because I have all the Latino students coming to me. That's fair, right? That's fair. That's not saying this is a bad organization. That's not saying any of those things, but be mindful and that we want them to know that I'm here for you. And you're never not going to get me. It's like I said earlier, students just pop up and my admin is like, what do you want me to do? Your schedule is nuts. We don't know what else to say. And I'm like, fine, 15 minutes to get, give them my cell, and you might not do that, but give them this and let them kind of, because that little interaction changes lives. So that was an excellent question, and it was so real and transparent. I hope that's beneficial for others. Who else? What else? What other question do we have, or comment, or just if you want to provide resources in this space? I know we only have just about 2 minutes left.
As we're running out of time. But no, this is a great talk. And, like Dr. Williams and Naiko has said, being able to kind of voice what you're feeling is sometimes the hardest step, because once you voice it, you can really sit with it and like, how do I feel? And now that someone else, they can talk to me and I can talk about this versus only having this internal conversation in our head, because sometimes that internal conversation will go down a road that it shouldn't, right? And that's just us. Sometimes we can't see the positive. We only see what we're lacking or what we don't have. But once you say it to someone else and you can have that conversation, you see that other people are there and they're experiencing the same things, that they're fighting. So you don't have to experience this anymore. And even, if you're going through this, like both Dr. Williams and Naiko said, you're paving the way for someone else, so they don't have to maybe go through the exact same struggle, or maybe feel that they're alone and they have someone to look up to. And I just think that that's so important in creating equitable spaces and bringing justice to the STEM field, because people have had years to have all these role models, and now people of underrepresented backgrounds are just now coming in to make these contributions. And so we need to stay and stick it out, but also don't stick it out if it's a bad situation. We want to make it the best situation for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And this has just been a wonderful conversation. I value it. I think I see Linda. She used to work with her at CSU. Hi, Linda. I just want to say that if you all want to continue the conversation, we're here as advocates for you. Our information is in the resources that Deb will send out. We welcome the opportunity to come to your campus to have those conversations that you may not be able to have. And we're just excited to navigate this process moving forward. You're not alone. This is not anything that's new to the field of STEM, but Deb and the team have been courageous to have this as a conversation. While we're being educated and while you're getting the resources and tools, that's important, but also having the conversation of being different in the space. LSMP is all about that. So just know that we're here to be a support to you and your campus. And thank you so much. And I hope to hear from you all soon.
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Williams and Naoko again, and to all of you who attended today's session. As a reminder, this session was recorded and it'll be posted in the Whova app by Wednesday of next week. And please, please, please complete the post-session survey that I've posted in the chat here in Zoom and in Whova. And you can also find it in the Whova app under the session description. Thank you again for attending and listening, and to our presenters.
Thank you all. Have a dynamic day and a great weekend.